Hi everybody, welcome. In this video, I'm going to do a comparative analysis of the Song of Roland and Osama bin Munkid's The Book of Contemplation. The purpose of this analysis is to understand how cross-cultural encounter and cross-cultural contact work in the Crusades. First, let's start with the differences between the two texts. The Song of Roland is a medieval French chanson de geste, or heroic song of deeds, written between the 9th and 10th centuries, which takes the 8th century Battle of Roncesvalles and transforms it into a magical event of heroism, warfare, and chivalry. It deals with the Western Front of the Crusades based in Spain. By contrast, the Book of Contemplation is a diary written in the 12th century by Syrian knight Osama bin Munkid, who participated in the Eastern Front of the Crusades centered around Jerusalem. Osama was an Arab Muslim poet, diplomat, and writer. His book is a potpourri of reminiscences, personal observations, anecdotes, wisdom, life experiences, and in places, bigotry. He witnessed and participated in the Crusades, starting from the First Crusade, which began with Pope Urban II's 1095 speech to the Council of Clermont, till the end of the Second Crusade, which ended when Salahuddin al-Ayyubi, popularly known as Saladin in Western European sources, conquered Jerusalem from the Latin Crusaders and shifted the balance of power back to the Muslim empires of the East. As is the case with many Renaissance men, Osama prided himself on cultivating a wide variety of skills. These included hunting and fighting, diplomacy and statecraft, and literary output. In classical Arabic literature, poetry is considered to be the creme de la creme of all literary genres. For that reason, Osama is more well known in classical Arabic literature for his poetic anthologies. These included Lubab al-Adab, or Kernels of Refinement, which is a set of poetic instructions on how to live a cultivated life, Kitab al-Asa, or the Book of Walking Sticks, which is a set of poetic odes to famous staffs and walking sticks in history and literature, and Al-Manazil wal-Diyar, or dwelling places and abodes. However, because of his diary's value in exploring cross-cultural encounter and contact between the Latin Crusaders and the Muslims of the Levantine East, today the Book of Contemplation is considered to be the most famous of Osama's writings. Before I get into my comparison between the two texts, I'm going to start with a disclaimer. The Book of Contemplation is not an Islamic text, but a text written by a rather colorful individual who happens to be Muslim. Like the troubadour of the Song of Roland, Osama as a narrator uses religious language to make sense of the macro and micro events of the Crusades, but the views and perspectives and reactions are very much Osama's own. I'd like you to think about Osama's auto-characterization, how he comes across as a personality. But if I had to react to him as a narrator, to me he comes across as a privileged jock who's very good at sports and hunting, who's also very good at writing, but whose life gets caught up in an intergenerational struggle against Crusader colonization in the lands of the Levant, Syria, Egypt, and Jerusalem. Differences of voice, narrative, and characterization between the Song of Roland and the Book of Contemplation can be tied to their very different genres. Epic poetry, like the Song of Roland, is collective storytelling in an elevated poetic style that is used to communicate events of collective importance to an entire community. By contrast, Osama's diary is a memoir, and part of its literary advantage is that it's less epic. It's gossipy, digressive, reflective, and it gives you a sense of a single individual's reaction to the cultural and military encounters of the Crusades. In Osama's text, as in the Song of Roland, religious language is used to other the combatants that the protagonist or protagonists are fighting against. However, notably, Osama does not use the word Christian when he's othering the Latin Crusaders, but rather the word Franks. And that's significant because that's a way to distinguish between the Eastern Christians who've been living in these lands for centuries, who he considers to be his compatriots, and the Latin Crusaders, who he sees as other and foreign. Now let's talk about the specific points of comparison between the Song of Roland and the Book of Contemplation. A big theme is the role that honor, loyalty, and chivalry play in these two texts. In both texts, honor is deeply homosocial. It concerns the relationships that the warrior has with his fellow warriors, and also the loyalty that is due to his king or political authority. In the Song of Roland, Roland's personal code of chivalry gets critiqued because he's so concerned with physical prowess, with proving himself martially on the battleground, that he doesn't blow the horn the elephant in time, leading to the death of Oliver and himself. There is a sense that the troubadour of the Song of Roland wants to emphasize chivalry as a code of conduct defined by concern for one's fellow knights, one's brothers in arms. Similarly, in the Book of Contemplation, Osama describes chivalry or bravery as a sense of care for one's reputation developed through one's relationships with fellow knights, as opposed to a state of being where one doesn't care if one lives or dies. Another shared theme between the two texts is loyalty to one's leader. In the Song of Roland, loyalty to Charlemagne is unquestioned. It's something that's due to a virtuous and charismatic leader, and it's also called upon by the hierarchical bonds of fealty that are shaped by the feudal structure. In the Book of Contemplation, we can see the political situation is a lot more fractured. There's quite a bit of jockeying for power between the various sultans and emirs from the dynasties of the Seljuks, the Fatimids, and the Zengids. And Osama is often quite sarcastic towards many political figures from these different dynasties. However, once Salahuddin al-Ayyubi consolidates power on the Muslim side, we see Osama again give that same degree of loyalty that's due to a virtuous and wise ruler. Charlemagne and Salahuddin are comparable as larger than life political figures who leave an outsized imprint upon the literatures of the West and the East in terms of being remembered as the exemplars of virtuous leadership. Another fascinating point of comparison between the Song of Roland and the Book of Contemplation is that both texts use othering language for the other, alongside expressions of cross cultural desire, affect, friendship, and admiration. For instance, in the Song of Roland, we have descriptions of the Muslim knights as pagans, devils, demons, the embodiments of evil. At the same time, we have a number of scenes where Muslim knights are described with admiration for their beauty, for their access to luxury goods and style, and for their physical fighting prowess. Likewise, in the Book of Contemplation, we have othering language that's used by Osama for the European Christian fighters, such as comparisons of them with animals or brutes. But in various scenes of the Book of Contemplation, Osama expresses a sense of admiration for the European Christian military prowess, and he also describes close friendships and relationships that he's formed with a number of crusaders, including the Knights Templar, one of the most famous crusading orders of the eastern branch of the Crusades. Many of Osama's accounts also show the humanity of both sides, such as his anecdote of meeting a crusader knight who's going off with his young daughter to wash the girl's hair because her mother has passed away and there's no one else to do it for her. And Osama expresses quite a bit of admiration and respect for him. So once again, we're able to see through the format of the diary these interesting pictures of cross-cultural friendships and cross-cultural relationships that do form despite the military ambiance, the fighting, and the othering language. In both the Song of Roland and the Book of Contemplation, admiration for the other usually corresponds to how close they see them as matching the cultural values and standards of their own side. Finally, gender offers us a fascinating point of comparison between the two texts. In the Song of Roland, women are rather absent, with the exception of Queen Bramimond, who will end the poem being captured, taken to France, and converted to Christianity. However, in the Book of Contemplation, we get some fascinating portraits of very strong women, both Muslim and Frankish, who are unafraid of battle, who will do anything necessary to avoid capture, and who are extraordinarily loyal to their communities. This is just a starting point for the fascinating comparisons that we can tease out between these two Crusades texts. Take care, and until next time.